Accordionist Bill Schimmel has expressed regret that he hasn't yet collaborated with the Rolling Stones, but he's done almost every other kind of work imaginable with his accordion and then some.
Bill, when you came through the door, we have a little setup here where we can see on a closed-circuit television who comes through the front door.
Right.
And one of our engineers, Al Lintz, took one look and said, "What's that he has in that box? Is that food?"
Well, I get all kinds of remarks like that. As an accordionist, one gets used to all different kinds of things. As a matter of fact, coming in here today, someone asked me if that was I a ventriloquist. And as an accordionist, you kind of get used to that after a while, and it's part of the magic of the instrument, actually.
When I was in the second grade, I was given the task of holding the door open after recess to let everyone back in the class. I told everyone about my new important duty. I hold open the door, and then they go in. This is called evolution in the realm of permanent transition, the accordion's staying power.
Well, do you suppose that the accordion will ever make it in the concert world? Will it ever be a concert instrument?
Well, I kind of feel that the accordion will appear and reappear and disappear and so forth on the concert stage. But to say that it's going to be a respectable concert instrument, I don't know. In some ways, I don't care. As a matter of fact, I'm a little bit suspicious about the accordion becoming too popular, because the accordion does have a bogus reputation, and the bogus reputation is part of the accordion's magic.
Why does the accordion need to be popular anyway? Why can't it be on its own merry way, do its own thing, take its place with the rest of musical instruments that have been praised, maligned, or both? Why does it need to be respected and accepted? To begin with, I think the accordion has two reputations, a real one and an unreal one. The real one is the one we all know and love as accordionists.
When I was 5, I started on piano lessons, and I was getting a lot of culture and all that kind of stuff. But whenever we had family gatherings, all my uncles would bring out the accordions and make this fantastic magic. And I would go crazy. As a matter of fact, by the time I was 10, I was virtually begging my parents to buy me this accordion.
The unreal one is the one that the cultural mainstream knows, with all the baggage that goes along with it. We crave the former. The cultural mainstream craves the latter. We love the instrument for what it really is, and the cultural mainstream loves certain factors of it. The cultural mainstream always wins. We win if certain factors jibe with the cultural mainstream. If they don't, we lose. The cultural mainstream is a force in society that determines many things. Who will be famous? How long will a trend last? When will this come in? When will that go out? It's ominous and ruthless. Some of my friends in the advertisement business refer to this force as Big Daddy, and the most successful of them are the first to admit that they don't know who Big Daddy really is, and neither do we. The accordion needs to be popular and part of the cultural mainstream in order to survive. It can't survive by itself, but it must constantly reevaluate itself so it can join forces with the cultural mainstream. It must be already a strong and existing culture unto itself. It must be at home with its positives and negatives. It should not wear a chip on its shoulders. It must be able to laugh at itself and take itself seriously simultaneously. The accordion, like any other instrument, must be given the time and space to evolve on its own terms.
For me, the best way for me to explain it, I don't think there's any vertical history of the accordion. I like the fact that the accordion has been invented many times and always finds a way to somehow reinvent itself and reappear.
So the accordion can exist in an in-between state and function nicely. In between what, you may ask? In between almost anything.
It gave me a chance to virtually utilize all of my interest in Eastern and Western, Middle Eastern, Middle Western, and combinations of the above, and do a complete, crazy, obsessive improvisation.
If we listen to early rock and roll, we find that the accordion was used beautifully. Some good examples in the 1950s are Bill Haley and the Comets, Johnny Grande, Rocco Granata, and Joey D and the Starlighters. All three examples share something in common. They all replaced their accordions with some sort of electronic organ. Could it be that the accordion was actually facilitating its own replacement? The accordion was marvelous in this in-between state. It could do brass-like jabs and organ-like sustains, even both at the same time, if you use your bellows as an accenting device. What concerns me is why the accordion works so fabulous in this in-between state, and why in doing so it gives itself over to something else. An in-between state is a perilous affair. One must like being in it. Most people, rightfully and humanly so, crave significance. The accordion seems to demand it at one level and repel it at another level. Why the extreme contrast?
Now, who could have done more for the accordion than Gary Larson in his Far Side cartoon, where the angels are getting their harps and the denizens of hell are being handed their accordion?
Correct. Correct. I would feel very, very bad if those things stopped happening, because I really think it's part of the accordion's gestalt. I think it's part of the accordion's magic. The accordion has a built-in ironic duality. No other instrument has this.
I coined that term first in a paper I delivered about 11 years ago at the University of Kansas City, and the paper was called Learning from Lawrence Welk. In there, I talked about the built-in ironic duality. That pertains to everything pertaining to the accordion.
It's hip and it's square. It's elegant and vulgar. It's classy. It ain't got no class.
It belongs on a news program. It doesn't belong on a news program.
It's there, it's with us, and there's nothing we can do about it. What we do is we celebrate that. Now, how did this happen?
Pietro Darrow, an Italian immigrant, brought the accordion to the vaudeville stage in 1906. And he came with this newfangled piano keyboard stuck on the instrument. It was a big hit.
Oh, it was always buttons before. It was so the question isn't really why the buttons, it's why the keyboard. The keyboard was the addition to the accordion.
Exactly. I felt that Pietro Darrow gave it, adding the keyboard, of course, gave it that ironic duality. It took a highbrow aspect, the piano keyboard, and put it on a lowbrow instrument. So the instrument became a hybrid of highbrow, lowbrow.
He was the original highbrow, lowbrow. In other words, he was wearing the built-in ironic duality. What happened 40 years later? Well, the accordion enjoyed some very, very prosperous periods. But for the most part, in the overall mainstream, if we're going to call it Middle America, the accordion was starting to be viewed as something different amongst the young. They wanted the thin, sexiness of the electric guitar. The guitar was thin, electric, and phallic. The accordion was large, bulky, and made the performer look too fat. This was sexy during vaudeville because in those days, fat was a symbol of prosperity. Fat was sexy then, thin was sexy in rock and roll and in television commercials.
Connie Francis won the Arthur Godfrey Talent Scouts, playing a white accordion. Now, after she won, Arthur Godfrey took her aside and said, you have a great career ahead of you. Let me give you one bit of advice. Drop the accordion.
Do you know who's a very good accordion critic?
I saw you with your accordion as the credits roll?
Yes.
What the hell was that?
Rosie O'Donnell.
I've been playing this for 20 years. Lose the accordion.
Also, if you're growing up in the 50s, you did everything possible that you could to hide your ethnic roots. It's the home sweet home wine that Grandma used to make. Serve Logan David, Logan David, Logan David wine. Anybody remember that one? In the 1950s, on Friday evening, on Shabbos, commercial from Logan David wine. Nothing Jewish sounding about it, by the way. That, ladies and gentlemen, is called assimilation.
You know, when you put an accordion on, if I'm German and I put an accordion on, I'm Bill Schimmel the German. If I take it off, I'm Bill Schimmel the American.
So amongst the young people, and also Lawrence Welk, you had this tug of war with the duality, the ironic duality of the instrument.
It's an interesting thing with Lawrence Welk. At one level, he depopularized the instrument among the young. But at the same time, he kept it out front for 30 years.
So, in essence, you turned on that TV show, you saw accordions playing for 30 years, once and sometimes twice a week. That's really playing with ironic duality. It's never one without the other. The accordion exists on the resonance and buzzes created by the tension of these two opposites. The buzzes produced are the lifeblood of the accordion. It's an uncomfortable state. It feels neither here nor there, but it's not. It's quite right here. This discomfort has produced many curves in the road. My mind is recalling an accordion with saxophone pads on the grill, or some of the early organ accordion attempts. In 1960, on a Saturday evening, Lawrence Welk show. A short gentleman named Louis Del Monte was the featured guest. He was playing a large accordion connected to a thick python-like cord plugged into two enormous white amplifiers. This accordion was actually an accordion. He was playing pop tunes. They sounded like hymns. This was one of the first attempts to bring the accordion, which was just starting to decline in appeal to young people, into the cultural mainstream. I mean to compete with the electric organ, even the guitar for that matter. These were honest attempts to make the accordion mainstream. They all failed. Why? Perhaps these attempts to resolve the dilemma, sort of like today, let's find an accordion star. There are none. Myron Florin comes closest. Why? He seemed to understand the nature of his instrument. He wasn't afraid to be a working musician, the member of a band, working for the boss. This meant blending in here, sticking out there, soloing here, sustaining chords there, accenting here, shaking the bellows there. He went to that in-between state, and he hasn't left it since. Myron Florin is a prime example of what I call the politics of the third banana. The ability to play a minor or even a menial role and failing elegantly by becoming extremely popular. Accordionists should study this and emulate it in their particular situations. The beautiful thing that Lawrence Welk did do is he would have Myron Florin at least play one solo every show and come out and do a flashy solo. And what Lawrence Welk could have done, but he didn't. He could have said, "Thank you, Myron," and you didn't see him or hear from him throughout the entire show until next week. Then the accordion would have looked like a novelty act, just to be brought out to do a flashy number. One of the greatest contributions he made, I feel, to keeping the accordion out front is to have Myron sit there and do this. Because what he let us know was that the accordion was able to take its place with any other instrument there. And another brilliant thing that Lawrence Welk also did is in his own way, he actually employed it in rock and roll, at least rock and roll according to Lawrence Welk. Rock and roll according to Lawrence Welk meant Calcutta, which was their 1960 #1 hit. They were dancing to it on American Bandstand. And I don't think that the teeny boppers at that time were realizing that it featured an elaborate accordion solo. If you remember this particular hit song, it opened up with, when they did it on their TV show, it opened up with the chorus getting up going back and forth like this. And the band and orchestra played, you go. Very good for jitterbugging, by the way. He stood up and smiled and played. Smiled. And eventually he did variation. And the teeny boppers swallowed it hook, line, and sinker on American Bandstand. They're jitterbugging to it. And I thought that was a coup for Lawrence Welk. To pull this off. And I don't think any of the teeny boppers really stopped to think, gee, is there an accordion playing there? But there really was one. And throughout the 60s, occasionally you would hear in the background the accordion being snuck in. There's that famous Rascals song, which is actually a very, very beautiful song that, how can I be sure in a world that's constantly changing? How can I be sure? Then the accordion, da-da-da, and this. A lovely solo. And that was already in the 60s during the psychedelic period. A student of mine actually now plays with the Rascals. He asked Felix, the leader of the Rascals, who was the accordion player on that session, and Felix doesn't remember. We don't know. We don't know who it is. It was just one of those moments where an accordionist went into the session and was asked to play ya da 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 da, was paid, and he left. And you find the accordionist showing up like that a lot. Although I don't think many listeners really stop to say, gee whiz, there's an accordion. And so here's a prime example of the built-in ironic duality working for the accordion along with the politics of the third banana. And that's the politics of the third banana. Whenever I go on a radio show and I deliver a laundry list of things I'm going to be talking about, and I say, you know, we talk about this, that, politics of the third banana, they go, eh? And I'd say the politics of the third banana.
Now I have to stop you there and ask you about what are you talking about when you say the politics of the third banana?
And they say, you're kidding. And I'd say, no, I'm not kidding. It's the politics of the third banana.
Yes, but why the politics of the third banana?
I'm going to address that issue today, start some violent discussions on it, and demonstrate what it sounds like, what it feels like, and what it really, really is. Accordionists are trained to be stars, to dazzle, if you will. Yet, most of the accordionists actually heard are anonymous, and there's no dazzle. Why not train accordionists to be anonymous from the very beginning without the dazzle?
So the idea is to head in the opposite direction, to head towards obscurity, to head towards regression in some sense?
Let the accordion be the star. This is the politics of the third banana. You will also feel a sense of being obliterated at the very, very beginning. But you will reappear. He or she will never be obliterated by any situation or circumstances due to the fact that the obliteration has taken place already. There's no disappointment. The accordionist in the realm of the politics of the third banana strives to be anonymous, yet sometimes he or she will fail. He or she will enter the limelight as a star, only to return to the obliterated state shortly after. The goal is to fail often. I was doing door today, as you noticed, and I do door even in some of my evening performances. And two ladies from music from Japan came here today, and they were surprised, I think, to see me doing the door. And I even said to them, go inside and wait, and if I'm not in by 3:15, start without me. No one asked who plays accordion with Paul Simon, or Bruce Springsteen, or John Mellencamp, or Tom Waits. It's the Tom Waits sound, or the Paul Simon sound, or the Bruce Springsteen or John Mellencamp. Let the accordion be the star.
What we learn as you get hooked onto the accordion is how present it exists.
It's pervasive in our culture.
It's pervasive in our culture. And its strongest factor is its anonymous factor. That we don't know who these people are, but they have shaped our accordion culture.
Misinformation enters in at this point. A dozen or so accordionists will come forward to claim credit or responsibility for these actions, which makes the real person or persons all the more obliterated. This is part of the process. One must go through it. The irony is that the obliterated accordionists are the ones who are actually working. So, let's get obliterated and practice the politics of the third banana.
I don't know, it's, you know, you're in a pit, or you're with a group of musicians, you're in some kind of ensemble, and there are the classical people, you know, and there are the jazz people. I mean, it pretty much gets kind of divided in that way. And then, you know, there's you, and you don't kind of fit in with the classical people, and you don't really fit in with the jazz people. You're kind of in the middle. You play the joke instrument, you know, you play you play the weird instrument, and you can easily be the butt of everyone's humor. And I think that part of what you're talking about is you have to get into that, you know, because if you're going to get your defenses up, you know, a lot of accordionists can get quite defensive about all this. you know. And I mean, you are playing. I mean, look at what you're playing. You know, there's a whole lot of baggage that goes with the accordion and a whole history with it. And you have to get into being kind of the odd man.
So there's a cost to it also. You have to, in a sense, give the notion of a certain kind of a stardom if you want to exist in this in-between state. You'll get more work this way. Even Myron Thorne practiced the politics of the third banana by taking his proper place as a member of the ensemble, always referring to Lawrence Welk as the boss. He then would emerge as a soloist with or without the dazzle and return to his seat with the group. These failures made him one of the most famous accordionists that ever lived. Is to put things in a sense of continuous, of a continuous in-between state.
An amazing combination of the blatantly obvious and the subtle to the point of indistinguishable in that piece.
I've always enjoyed that state as an accordionist. I feel that this state can be yours if you work hard at it. You will get much joy out of it, but you will get much paradoxical joy out of it. For the accordion to evolve, it must be in permanent transition. This is the staying power of the accordion. It is no wonder that the accordion became fashionable again. First, there was an overload of electronic technopop in the early 1980s, giving rise to an intense desire for acoustical music. In 1983, a book entitled Megatrends by John Naisbitt became a bestseller. It was one of those future shock type books that warned us to the effect, get with the new technology or get left behind. It made an interesting point, however. Whenever a revolution takes place, there's always a reaction. Thus, the new high-tech revolution will facilitate a high-touch revolution. Computers and synthesizers are high-tech. Accordions seem to be the ultimate high-touch. And its comeback was in its acoustical dimension, even when it imitated electronics. Another paradox is that the synthesizer players, especially those who are former accordionists, needless to say, there are many of them, started producing sounds that resembled accordions. The culmination of this was called Simon's Graceland. It was considered an accordion-dominated record. The accordion appeared on 2 tracks, and the rest of the accordion sounds were done on synthesizers sounding like accordions. Yes, the accordion dimension did resonate far and beyond the other 2 tracks it was on. It's one of the accordion's strong points. We hear the accordion in its absence. But the real power here is the accordion's dominance due to its willingness to be replaced. In this case, with the synthesizers that sounded like accordions. My work on Tom Waits' Frank's Wild Years is a prime example. Although I play on 9 cuts, ironically, only 2 cuts are on the accordion. The first one is a series of aggressive afterbeats, somewhat horn-like, and the other one hooked up and filtered through a Leslie tone cavity. Both I'll Be Gone and It's More Than Rain contain an accordion part that is in the process of replacing itself. On the remaining takes, I play Leslie tone pedals, piano, pump organ, cocktail piano, and electric organ. In Road to Patagonia, an accordion odyssey in dark vaudeville, Micki Goodman and I stage all the events in a transitional mode. Arguments, humiliations, dark thoughts, commentary, and music. All the materials, dialogues, and events that would normally take place in rehearsals on the way to a performance, after a show, etc., were laid bare right on stage, right before the audience's very eyes. The historical aspects of past, present dimension were brought to life by the accordion's ability to evolve itself out of a transitional sense of time and space. This is evolution in the realm of permanent transition. Micki and I also explored this sense of transition in classic reality. Opera Philharmonica, Small Hotels, Dead End Avenue, and Rite of Fall. This sense of permanent transition gives way to the development of dimensions worth talking about. The seantic dimension. Derived from an obsolete word, seant, meaning to see, this dimension allows the watcher to experience a performance in continuous sense of static movement. This seems like a contradiction in terms, but one can really experience a sense of the accordion's duality in this dimension. It produces a thatness.
But after listening to your music and talking to you a little bit, I get the sense that that maybe the accordion is in some way the apotheosis of the third stream, that all of these traditions are coming together, the ethnic traditions, the classical, the jazz, the pop, the avant-garde. The boundaries are broken down completely. All of these traditions have just become part of the data stream moving through this musical mainframe, the accordion.
And that's the aim of our seminar.
And it comes
to make that point evident and more evident and more evident and more evident.
The existential accordion. This dimension is based on the notion that if good accordion players dominated almost every aspect of music, not as a pressure group, but simply good players in the concert hall, bar and grill, Carnegie Hall, peanut stands, Lincoln Center, jazz clubs, lounge, rock concerts, radio and television, the accordion would be a forever thing. It's not what it does, but what it is.
You have a piece that you're calling Realities, which I think is the reality of what you've just said.
Yes, it influenced a kind of form. What I like to do is take many instances an already existing form, or in many cases an already existing composition that's common ground to many listeners, and do it in my own way through composition as well as performance. And I call these works because Otto Luning said to me one day, he said, "You know, Bill," he said, "what you're doing is what Liszt and Yosemite did, except you're doing it in a contemporary sort of way." So I stopped calling them fantasies. I started calling them realities.
The staying power of the accordion depends on its ability as a culture to keep its eye on the ball unflinchingly. It must be ready to step aside upon replacement and move in whatever direction it is called upon. It's the movement that's important. It must be in movement. Only then will it stay in the mainstream. Only then will it take its place with the rest of musical instrument families and have its own distinct personality. Only then will it be able to proudly state, "I am an accordion." Only then will we as couriers be taken on a magic carpet ride far beyond anyone's wild expectations. And trust me, I had a glimpse. Thank you.